Lynn Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Well, hello there on a beautiful Monday morning here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, after an extremely windy evening. It is the 18th of November. Oh, man. Generally speaking, are all the leaves down by now? I would think they are. By November, it's past. It's the second half of November. It just seems like there's an awful lot of leaves still hanging on despite all that wind. Anyway, blah, who cares? So, I was just looking at some of the stuff that I read constantly, and I throw things in my little sack over here, which you don't see. And then I just, in my head, I think, oh, I've got so much stuff to talk about for Monday. I mean, I'm already thinking that on Saturday. And then I don't even look. And then this morning, just moments ago, I open up and I pull it out. It's not as much as I thought, but here's the thing. It's all sort of, well, depressing is one way of looking at it, and I guess just acknowledging problems that we as a people should be working on would be another way of putting it in a less maybe judgmental manner. They're all interesting topics, but I am giving you fair warning that for a Monday, where I usually like to start a little light, I don't have a lot of light stuff. If you're in need of light stuff, I'm giving you an opportunity to cut and run, okay? Although, let's hear it for the Steelers. It was a wonderful game. Although, please lose those bumblebee outfits. I cannot. I know you love them, but they're so ridiculous. Oh, my God. I don't even know how those big guys can put that stuff on.
Love it.
I mean, we all know, Jess, and you would know, that horizontal stripes are not good for big people because they further, make you bigger. And I know that women of a certain, you wouldn't wear horizontal stripes, would you?
No, they're big and bad.
I have to admit, I didn't react as strongly as I did the first time I saw them. But I don't know. I sort of think it's hard to take them seriously when they look like that. Although, I think the Detroit Lions are now going to take them somewhat seriously. Okay, so let me think. Anything else that's not... we come from families, and I got very lucky in the family sweepstakes. My family is close. We can argue, but we never pull away from each other, and there's a closeness. I'm very, very lucky in my family, and I see other people's families, and I see some ain't so lucky, and it's a little harder to sort of maintain a family, or things just get downright ugly, and you wouldn't want to be a member of some families, to put it mildly. But some of you are, and there's nothing you can do about it. So Here's a family I wouldn't want to be a part of. Dick Cheney's family. I mean, because I wouldn't want him for a father. I wouldn't want Lynn Cheney for a mother. There's a meanness to him that that just chills my blood. But they always sort of evidenced, and it gave me pause sometimes. They always appeared to be a really strong family. And I always think that says something positive. They hung together. And the fact that when his daughter Mary came out as a lesbian, he did not, despite his conservative Republican credentials, disown her or say anything negative. In fact, he embraced her. He embraced her now wife. He publicly said that he had absolutely nothing against a same-sex marriage, that people who love each other should be able to. And, I mean, he blew my mind because Darth Vader, coming out in that sort of humane way. But he was able to be humane because it was his daughter. He loved her. And he saw the relationship she was in. He recognized it as a loving relationship. Right? So there's that. But now, the other daughter, the scarier daughter, the straight daughter, Liz, is, as I'm sure you know, running in a Republican primary in the state of Wyoming? Yeah, I think. In the state of Wyoming, in which she is taking on an incumbent Republican senator, which is generally not considered nice, And this is a guy who considered himself a friend of Dick Cheney's. Two big shot Wyoming Republicans. Well, it's been ugly. It's been really ugly. First of all, Liz hadn't exactly lived in Wyoming, so there's carpetbagging charges and all of this stuff. But she's a chip off the old block. And if you've ever seen her on television, she's a sharp-tongued, she's her dad's daughter, without a doubt, politically. I mean, just scary. And so she went on Fox News the other day and declared herself, because she's running to the right of the sitting Republican senator, she could not, I guess, say anything other than that because she wants that job. She wants to be in the U.S. Senate. And she said that she was absolutely opposed to same-sex marriage. Never mind that her sister was in one. Well, the sister and her wife took to Facebook, and here's what the wife said on Facebook. Liz has been a guest in our home, has spent time and shared holidays with our children. When Mary and I got married in 2012, she didn't hesitate to tell us how happy she was for us. To have her now say that she doesn't support our right to marry is offensive, to say the least. And there have been more back and forth. And the New York Times reported today that, in fact, Dick Cheney's two children, these two sisters, have not spoken to each other since the spring, and apparently do not intend to speak to each other. So we have heard that in the fraught political culture that we live in now that families have ruptured over political issues, which seems so wrong to me in so many ways. Many families have been strained. My own larger family, not my immediate family, included, so that when you get together for a big event that brings in the cousins and the thises and that's, and then you end up with people everywhere from the, Tea Party to the Socialist Workers' Party. Well, stuff happens. But here are 4 people who had a strong, strong family, and they're being ripped apart because of, I would say, the one sister, Liz's, putting her political ambition above her sister's happiness, above her sister's. It's mind-boggling to me. It's really mind-boggling to me. She has been at their table. She has held their children. She is the aunt. There are 2 children in this marriage, in Mary Cheney's marriage. And her one sibling, her one sister, goes on network television and announces to the world that she does not think it proper that her sister and her sister's love and their children should be able to constitute a legitimate family. And she has to say that if she stands any chance of winning against the incumbent senator in Wyoming. A post her father has been, pulling out all the stops. He has burned bridges and friendships in this effort. But that it would come to burning a family relationship this close is amazing to me, that is the choice that is made. And the fact that Dick Cheney is supporting the one daughter's political aspirations would seem might create friction with the other daughter. It's really all very sad and I would say tawdry, but this, I don't know, this shows the complexity of family relationships. And both sisters acknowledge that they have in the past, and up until all of this, been extremely close. So it was only this political issue that now has created such a rift. Sad, unbelievably sad, but also it certainly says a whole lot about the one sister, and I would argue the father. Some emails. Chuck writes, speaking of the Stillers, you said on Friday that Stiller fans are not the best fans, and yesterday's game may have proved that to be true. I have never seen so many empty seats. Yeah, it was pretty horrible, wasn't it? And I have never seen so many opposing fans in our own stands. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of Detroit blue in there. Yeah, it was clear that Steeler fans had given up their seats to Detroit. Well, and Steeler fans, there's a certain percentage of Steeler fans that are obviously meteorologically they can't handle bad weather. And so they took one look out at the rain and said, I'm not going to sit in that rain. And I have to admit, I'm glad I didn't have a ticket. But because who wants to? I wouldn't want to either. You can watch it on TV and stay dry. But it's true. Real fans go. And the people that were there, the Steeler fans that were there, saw a great game, just as the ones last week did. And also, there were 10,000 empty seats. Those were 2 wins that played in front of not sold out. Well, I guess it's sold out, but not a full house. People don't show. And it is sad. On the way over here, I was listening to the blowhard talk station, which I sometimes do to annoy myself. And they were talking about the Steeler fans, too. But they were not addressing that issue. They were addressing the boorishness, which I think I mentioned last week. And they were talking about how you can't take a child. This guy had his 10-year-old kid there, and he said the people behind him were, M, F, and this and that, and every word. And he was a little fearful of asking these guys to, he's afraid they'd end up, punching him out or something. But this is the kind of environment and atmosphere that has been created at Heinz Field, and that the Steelers better get a handle on, because people will not bring their children. You wouldn't want to. And at some point, you wouldn't want to go yourself. So why let the drunks take over? They're not the majority. They are not the majority. The foul-mouthed drunks, they're the ones you see and hear because of their behavior. But and most people just sit there and take this sort of poisoning of the environment. It is only the Steeler organization that can fix that. And the only way to fix it is to to really have a kind of zero tolerance approach, that as soon as somebody is deemed to be shouting out things or sloppy drunk, they're gone. Just get them out. And eventually people, if they want to see a game, might start improving their behavior. If you really want to get tough, you can do what I know the Packers do, which is confiscate your season tickets. If you get thrown out, you've lost your tickets. You're never coming back. And a few of those kinds of instances, and where it's noted, the PA announcer says it at the game, which happens in Green Bay. People watch themselves a little bit better. Yes, caller, I'm sorry.
Yes, I probably pissed you off when I tell you this, but I watch the Steelers and that. But the whole entertainment business, I wish it would just go away. Honest to God, it never will, I know that. But how these people worship these players and singers and anything in entertainment, and then you have this society where we can't even feed our own people, and I'm sorry. There's something wrong with this society like that.
I'm not going to disagree.
No?
No.
I think we got our priorities screwed up.
Oh, yeah. It's not as if we can't do both. It's not as if we can't have children with full stomachs and people having access to good medical care, whether they're rich or poor, and also have entertainment and games. We can have it all. We just, as you suggest, have our priorities way, way, way out of whack, and we're so sort of like distracted by all the entertainment that comes our way that we don't pay attention to the bigger problems that surround us.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
Okay,
Bye.
thank you.
Yeah. I mean, not to get everybody unhappy and everything, but I really wish the Steelers would get it under control. I would like to be able to go back to a Steeler game. I don't go because of it. I'd be at PNC Park every day and night because it's a totally different environment. Totally. I've never heard anyone shouting, obscenities at a Pirate game. I'm sure it's happened here and there, but it's a totally different environment. And you can tell if you ever watch the game on television, when you see the fans, there's tons of children. And they're having a ball. And it is a much, much, much family-friendlier environment. And just a civilized person environment. To allow the drunks and the boors to set the ambiance, the flavor of that environment is insane. And I wish the Steelers would acknowledge it and get... Maybe I should write an op-ed piece. People should start putting some pressure on them. You know, I suppose if you're the Rooneys and the other mucky mucks, you don't sit in the stands. You don't have that experience. You're up in your rarefied, glassed-in, drinking. If you're drinking, you're certainly not drinking beer. You're drinking something more wonderful. And I just think they don't know. I think they should go to a game like Joe Schmo goes to a game. Sit in the regular seats. Sit out in the rain, and see what the experience is there. And I think if that's the experience that you're asking people to pay for at a pretty dang good price, that you would realize that you are not delivering the kind of product that you should. It's not just the players and the quality of play on the field. It is also the quality of the experience that the fan has in the stands. And it's horrible. All too often. All too often. All right. Ray writes regarding Dick Cheney, he has spent a career cultivating lies and division and evil. As Malcolm X said, chickens coming home to roost. Oh, Ray, you're so often spot on. Russ says this, back to the Steelers. It is the enablers of the drunks that are the big problem. People who stand around and gawk at the drunks so they can get them on their cell phones and then send videos to social media. Yeah, well, I think everybody who sits silently or who thinks it's funny those are enablers. But ultimately, the responsibility lies with the Steeler organization. And I don't understand why they don't wake up to it. I really, it's beyond me, but I think maybe I stumbled upon it by saying that they don't experience it. And probably their friends don't experience it. So nobody says to them, hey, I paid top dollar for those seats I have on the 35-yard line. And it's becoming intolerable to use them. Because you've also allowed these idiots to purchase seats around me, and they're keeping me from being able to enjoy the game. It's not a good business model, Mr. Rooney. The business isn't all on the field. I should tell them. Okay. And that brings us to our first commercial timeout. I have a friend who can do that. Can you do that?
No. Mm-mm.
I wish I could. I can't even imagine what's going on when you put your fingers in your mouth. Why do the fingers make a difference? Seriously, why? Acoustically. Well, if anyone can teach me how to do that whistle, I would be very, very proud. Okay, we got a commercial timeout.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3333. 3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
Just in time for the holidays, Little's Shoes is your UGG headquarters. Little's has the largest selection of UGGs for men, women, and children to stay warm with shearling-lined boots, shoes, and slippers. Don't forget to get your hats, gloves, scarves, and more. Bring the entire family to view one of the largest in-store UGG shops in the U.S. All available at Little's Shoes, Pittsburgh's largest family shoe store. Forbes Avenue in Squirrel Hill or littleshoes.com. Download the CP Haps app to find out what's happening in Pittsburgh. It's the fun and free app that puts the most popular events at your fingertips. Text events to 77948 to download now. Available on the App Store and Google Play. Brought to you by Pittsburgh City Paper.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn@pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
Okay. So, some of the issues. By the way, I want to point out, for those of you who don't see the New York Times, and I did not bring this in because I didn't have time this morning to read the whole thing, they have done a series about a drug that I never heard of before. And there's like 3 pages in the New York Times today devoted to this series, and it's all about Pittsburgh. This is in the New York Times. It's about a Pittsburgh doctor in the South Hills who's passing out this drug like candy, apparently. He's an ex-addict. The whole thing is very weird. The product, this is something that has replaced generally, I want to say methadone. It's called BUPE. Do you know? Have you ever heard this? Bupe something or other. And it's a godsend apparently to some people, but can become a nightmare as well. And there are apparently pharmacies in Pittsburgh that if they see this doc's signature and it's for that, they won't even fill it. They tell people, just go away. I ain't touching this. And yet he's still practicing. I didn't read the whole thing, but it looks, wow. So he's got addicts all over in his office, and he's handing this drug out, which apparently is not, a lot of people think should not be available. And I have no idea. But if you're looking for an interesting read, I recommend that. I guess the New York Times is a little hard to get online if you're not subscribing, but if you have access, or go to the library, you know? Yeah, go to the library. But I did not bring that in. I did bring in this, which does have to do with, I've got a few things here. Let me just throw them out. And as I said earlier when the show started, this is, I'm afraid, depressing. But, you know, depressing's one way of looking at it. And another is that these are calls to arms. These are calls to, when I was learning to type, the one thing that you would always type, and I don't know where that came from, is, now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of their country. And I would type that over and over again. Now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of their country. And that's what I'm thinking. This is, I shouldn't look at this as depressing. I should look at this as clarion calls for all good citizens to wake up, pay attention, and get involved. Come to the aid of their country. I'm not quite sure where to start. Let's start here. Let's start with this one. I've got 3 separate big stories here, big issues. There was a piece, again, I believe it was in the New York Times, calling attention to a report that was put out by the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU. And it's mind-boggling. I must say I did not know, but I know now. And you're about to know if you didn't know. This country is, and I'm sure you might know this, incarcerates more of its citizens than any other nation in the world. Did you know that? And what's so bizarre about that is that this is, the land of the brave and the home of the free. Well, tell that to the millions and millions of Americans who are in our prisons as we continue to build more and more, to incarcerate more and more. I mean, even the horrible, you can't believe countries where you wouldn't even want to step foot over the line for 1 second just to say you'd been there, are as horrific as we are in terms of percentage of people who are spending often their lives in prison. Get this. Let's say you tried to sell $10 of pot to an undercover agent. Okay, people have done that. By the way, $10 of pot is like what? Is one little joint. People have done that, and I don't know the person's name, but a person who did that is serving life in prison without the possibility of parole. Do you think that's a just sentence? How about somebody who, shared some LSD at a Grateful Dead concert? Okay. Should they spend the rest of their life in jail without the possibility of parole? They are. How about the guy who siphoned some gas from a truck? Should that crime land him in jail for the rest of his life without possibility of parole? It did in the United States of America, land of the free. The ACLU figures conservative estimate that there are well over 3,000 men and women in this country serving life sentences without possibility of parole for picayune-ish crimes like that. And that does not, it's a conservative estimate because it doesn't include inmates, let's say, not serving life, but let's say who are serving a sentence of, say, 350 years. And that as a result of nonviolent drug sales. Nor does it include those in prison for crimes legally classified as violent, even though they are not violent. Like failing to report to a halfway house, or trying to steal an unoccupied car. People who have engaged in those, yes, crimes, have found their sentence to be, you're going to jail for the rest of your life. And that is because of these absurd mandatory sentencing guidelines, which judges decry. 4 out of 5 of these prisoners who are doing life with no hope for crimes that no other nation would, well, maybe North Korea, they'd kill them, but 4 out of 5 prisoners were sentenced for drug crimes like possessing a crack pipe. Possession of a pipe. And you forfeit your life, essentially. A lot of the others are property crimes, cashing a stolen check, shoplifting. And in more than 83% of all the cases, the ACLU tells us the judge had no choice whatsoever, no discretion whatsoever. If that's the case, why should we even have judges? Let's pocket their salaries and just have some kind of a computer. You just feed in whatever it is they've done, and it can spit out these sentences if you're not going to put a human and humane factor in. The American prison population is now over 2 million people. It is the highest incarceration rate in the world. And here, of course, is the other part. African Americans are 20 times more likely than whites to be sentenced to life without parole for non-violent crimes. There's only 20% of the nations of the world allow a sentence of life without parole for anything, for murder. 20% allow a sentence of life without parole. And those that do, the vast, vast, vast majority are for, yes, I mean, just heinous crimes. We put people away for siphoning gas, for selling somebody a joint for $10, to going on a little acid trip at a Grateful Dead concert, to cashing a stolen check. Where is our sense of proportionality or justice? Some states are now onto this, and they are because they know, first of all, it makes no economic sense. The cost of this incarceration is unbelievable compared to rehabilitation, compared to sanity. I don't think in Pennsylvania that's the case. We're now building some humongous prison outside of Philly. I think I've mentioned this before. We're really not, the state does not see fit to fully fund the Philadelphia public school system, but it will build this 4,000-person state-of-the-art prison to put all those people in who will be uneducated and more likely to turn to a life of crime. Just saying. We don't pay any attention to that, do we? Can you imagine if someone you knew was one of these people? My heart bleeds for them. My heart breaks for them. This country's insane and punitive as hell. The United States has less than 5% of the world's population, but we have 25% of the world's prisoners. Maybe that's the way for you to get your head around it. We constitute 5% of the world's population and 25% of the world's prisoners, and we call ourselves the land of the free. And our racial problem is evidenced in this as well, with this craziness destroying the lives of more African American people and families, because they are much more likely to find themselves being sentenced to these outrageous punishments. This is not morally defensible. It is not economically defensible. It is not a sustainable kind of a model. But here again is what happens when you create fear in people, the voters, and then cater to that fear. We've all seen the ads, and I'll throw them in jail and throw away the key and blah, blah, blah. Those are the guys that win. So we'll feel safer. Stupid, and mostly immoral. moral. But we're not paying any attention to that. And one thing that could be done, like Barack Obama, you know what he could do? He has hardly used this power he has at all, which is to pardon people. He should have somebody figure out how many of these poor people have these sentences as a result of federal, something that he has some control over. I don't know if he can pardon somebody that's convicted in a state court or it has to be a federal court. I don't know. He could pardon them like that. But of course, even for him, who's not exactly at a high point in his tenure, but even for him, the political risk in this punitive nation would probably be perceived as too great. Okay. Commercial timeout. We'll be back.
With Lynn Cullen Live.
Go to the all-new BergBargains.com for great deals on gift cards from your favorite local restaurants, bars, museums, attractions, and shows. Log on now for great deals from Ibiza, Atria's, Monticello's, the Pittsburgh Opera, and City Theater. The all-new BergBargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains, BergBargains.com.
For the millions living with COPD, breathing becomes a real struggle. COPD stands for chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, but you may have heard of it as chronic bronchitis or emphysema. Over time, it makes it harder and harder to breathe until you feel like you're breathing through a straw. COPD is the 4th leading cause of death in the U.S. It kills 1 person every 4 minutes, and it took my grandmother. An estimated 24 million Americans are affected, but as many as half of them don't even know it. It's a race against time to spread the word about this serious disease. If you're over 35 and have ever smoked, you could be at risk. The good news is, there are steps you can take to improve your symptoms. I'm Danica Patrick, and I drive for COPD. Take action today to breathe better tomorrow. Join the movement at driveforcopd.com, take our screening questionnaire today, and talk to your doctor.
Now, it's back to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com.
Okay, I note that Doris Lessing has died. She is the author, winner of the Nobel Prize, who famously, I guess she got out of her car and was besieged by reporters telling her she'd won. And she famously said something to the effect of, I don't care. Like whoop-de-doo, who gives a damn, something like that, which at the time I found rather funny. But after, I'd never read her, and after reading about her, I find her such a despicable human being that I'm no longer laughing at her response. I now see it as that of a bitch. And she's awful. Goodbye, Doris. Jeez. We got any Doris Lessing fans out there? Screw her. Do you know what she did? Here's why I can't. Absolutely. I mean, she did lots of things that make my skin crawl. But the one thing she did that makes my skin crawl is she just up and abandoned her 2 little children. She walked away from her husband and her children because, well, she wasn't enjoying that life at all. As a matter of fact, she said in an interview, here it is, I couldn't stand that life. It's this business of giving all the time, day and night. Okay, Doris, well then, maybe your children are better off without your wonderful input. She didn't like her children. She didn't want to have anything to do with them. She didn't want to be. And so she picks up and goes. Meanwhile, she's having an affair with somebody else. Then she marries him. Then she has another kid. Then she pretty much, and she wasn't even curious about her children. It's not like they knew her. She would, every once in a while, some relative somewhere would bring her up to date. Oh, so-and-so he's now 18 years old. And he said, yeah, she didn't care. She just seems like she was an awful human being. And I'm sorry to say, is most known for having written some feminist book. I mean, that's the one that, as a matter of fact, some people say it's the Golden Notebook. Some people have said it's the only thing she wrote that you could even read, because her writing is so often impenetrable. So why the hell did they give her the Nobel? She might have been right. She said something like, I'm 89 or whatever she was when she got it. And she said, yeah, and they probably figured give it to her because the old goat's going to kick the bucket. Well, that might have been. And I believe that some other writer of note, and I forget who, said when she got the Nobel that, he scoffed and said that he said it's obviously some politically correct decision on the part of the committee. I don't know. She just sounds awful. And if anybody knows other things that can dissuade me from that, I know a life of 94 years can't be summed up in, with just that one adjective. Maybe there was some nice things about her, but reading this very long obit, I don't see him. She just sounds like the most god-awful human being. And I'm glad, because now, sometimes you hear about a writer and you think, oh my God, and I never read them. I really should. I wouldn't read anything a woman like that wrote. Okay, so if anyone wants to come to Doris Lessing's defense, feel free. Here's something that's a little scary. There's a meeting in Warsaw, Poland, going on, and it's an international meeting. All the nations are there. Anyone who's anybody is there. And it's about what the world collectively can do about the climate change. Well, actually, the one thing they're trying to do is figure out if they can agree on ways to reduce carbon emissions, because obviously that would help the problem. And there's just a little teeny item here in the paper. It could be that, here again, this shows how we're not serious. Carbon emissions could well be, the end of us. Literally the end of us. And this is how much attention this little piece gets. An effort by the world to figure out a way that we can all agree will tamp down carbon emissions is apparently going nowhere. Japan, in fact, at this meeting, decided to go the other way and says it's decided it isn't going to do its voluntary emissions stuff anymore at all. So they're out. And these negotiations have been going on for 20 years and yielded really nothing much. And it says here the talks don't seem to be getting any closer after a tumultuous first week at this year's session in Warsaw. What was that great line Potter had years ago? He was here and he said, "We are unserious people living in serious times." I suspect all times have been serious. But I wonder if people have ever been more unserious than we I wonder. It's not good. I told you I had all this stuff that's unsettling, but what are we going to do? I mean, what? I don't want to be part of the people who pay no attention. And by virtue of the fact that I'm paying attention doesn't mean I'm helping anything either. I'm just one step ahead of the people who are not. Knowledge is the first step, but action would be the next. And I don't know if I'm there. Shooting off my mouth is not action. Ray writes of Doris Lessing, she was a privileged English woman. Enough said. You think? Well, okay. I don't know a lot of it. You mean, well, the English mothers are known for sort of abandoning their children, aren't they? I mean, even Queen Elizabeth sort of didn't have anything to do with raising Charles. And it's a certain, it's, you have a child and then you turn them over to people and to boarding schools and you never see them again. But walking out on them. Hello, caller. Hello, caller.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Yeah, she was born in what the time was Persia.
Yeah, I know. She was born in Iran and then went to Rhodesia, and I mean, so her daddy was a...
When she left her other two kids, she took her kid from her second marriage with her, though.
Oh, how wonderful of her.
But doesn't she remind you of the kind of person that can, and I don't mean this in any light terms, can cause a Holocaust? Intelligent, but just so egotistic.
So self-centered, right.
I am so superior that I can't burden myself with the boringness of two children who I chose to bring into this world. Crazy.
Yeah, right. And you know who she there's a resemblance to? Dick.
Well, I would say mentally, Ayn Rand.
No, but I also want to say Dick Cheney. I want to, right?
Yeah.
These are people who look down their noses at everybody, who think they... Yeah. But yeah, Ayn Rand, although she would be appalled, Doris would, at being lumped with these people because, of course, she considered herself this progressive lefty type.
Yeah, call me. Yeah.
What a
Well, hey, listen, that's not even why I called. I called because I happened to turn on PCN, the Pennsylvania Cable Network, this morning, and I got caught the tail end of they have a little legislative discussion between someone who follows the Pennsylvania legislation and the host.
Yeah.
And I caught the tail end, and he talked about three bills that the Republicans before the Pennsylvania, before the governing body of Pennsylvania. One was to post "In God We Trust" in all public schools visibly.
I'm aware of that one.
Two was, and I believe this representative was from Allegheny County, was to make the endangered species part of Pennsylvania, the Game Commission does that now, to put that in front of the legislators so they would have an input on whether something was put on the endangered species list.
Would that they were on the endangered species list.
And what was the third? Oh, no, I'm going to forget the third. The third was, Daryl Metcalf, a memo to impeach Kathleen Kane.
Ah! Oh, we deserve...
They're doing such wonderful work, aren't they?
I'll tell you, and they are one of the highest paid legislatures in the country, and look what they do. We deserve, we deserve.
I heard that. Well, then Costa, it's Costa, right? The other legislator from Allegheny County.
Well, no, not Guy. I think Guy is local. He's the one that Bill Peduto just put in charge of stuff. There's so many damn Costas, I don't know which one.
Well, it's a Costa that got up and kind of tried to put Metcalf in his place. And then they showed Daryl Metcalf's response, and he was just about foaming at the mouth that he was being insulted and called a bully. And it was just crazy. Okay, you talk about, we're not doing anything about carbon, we got idiots, we elect idiots like this and that. I don't really, at this point, we deserve to
That's sort of the way I feel. Yeah, I sort of feel the same way.
And so
I mean, maybe.
So I'll enjoy your show until that happens, and hey, sit on it and we're along for the ride. So.
Oh, okay. Goodbye. I mean, no, I'll say I don't deserve it. I don't put those idiots in office, but I'm not doing enough. Those of us who feel that way need to do more, obviously. I don't know. Action! Action! Can you handle one more? This came from, this guy has a Nobel, too. I think his is more deserving than Ms. Lessing's. Joseph Stiglitz. He is an economist, and he is the holder of a Nobel Prize for economics. He wrote an opinion piece about the insanity that comes from Washington, D.C.'s legislature, the Congress, in regard to food. Caller, go ahead, please.
Good morning, Clarence, Canonsburg.
You need no introduction, Clarence. You have a voice that everybody recognizes.
Well, you may have some new listeners.
Oh, well, to my new listeners, this is Clarence from Canonsburg, who needs no introduction.
Anyway, the action. What actions can be taken?
Yeah, what about what
Don't
action?
need to be big.
All right.
But arguing with friends and family.
There's a start.
Yeah, that's
But you have to know how to argue. See, I mean, you don't get someone over to your side by telling them they're idiots and screaming at them. I'm not a good persuader in that way because I just lose it.
I avoid. It usually takes me about 10 or 15 minutes to get to the idiot part.
Well, but that's a killer.
What people don't. I'm not interested in changing the mind of the person I'm arguing with.
Well, then what's the point?
I'm interested in changing the mind of the people listening. Because, the people who are listening to the argument, who don't pay attention to the kind of stuff you're saying, but they'll hear two people discussing it.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, the people who are climate change deniers, think we should just lock everybody up and throw away the key.
Right.
Or they talk. They talk all the time. They talk loud. And most people just put their heads down and say, idiot, and walk away. And then the other people who are listening say, oh, is that true? They just listen. That's all. Most people are, they'll just follow who's ever speaking the loudest. And, that's what I do. I just argue every chance I get, especially on my Facebook page. Man, it's a bunch of arguments on there. Just got through with that climate change denying people last week.
So you're not, okay, so that's it's an interesting point. So you're saying it's not that you're trying to change the mind of the person you're actually arguing with, but all those people who are on Facebook reading the argument or in a room listening to the argument that might get, well, that's
they never hear the other side.
Yeah.
It's like the Fox News thing. The Fox News got so big, and Rush Limbaugh got so big so fast because there was never a counter-argument, because nobody believed that anybody would believe that crap. Nobody challenged them for so long that they became a monster.
Yeah.
What was that?
No, I said whoops. I mean, we should have realized that they needed to be countered immediately.
Yeah.
Well, it's an excellent point you make. And now I feel like I should, I can argue as long as there's an audience.
Yeah, and I didn't realize there was such a big audience on Facebook until I started walking around running into people who said, oh, Clarence, I wish I could say what you say on Facebook. Oh, I read that thing on Facebook, and I didn't realize that was going on. And I was like, oh, now you got me doing more Facebook stuff.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Good for you, and let that be a lesson to all of you.
Yeah, everybody's worried about losing friends, like the lynch, to getting their families anger. I have a close family too.
Yeah.
We have a huge range of ideas, but we're not going to reject each other like the Cheneys did.
No.
So we can do that.
Right.
But most people are afraid of losing their friends and family.
Right.
And guess what? If you lose them, the world's at stake.
Oh.
After that hurricane in what was that? Korea.
Philippines.
In those
Philippines.
What was that?
Philippines.
The Philippines, rather, yeah. And the tornado in those tornadoes in Illinois, it's like, come on now. extreme weather. You can't get too much more extreme than that, within 2 weeks.
Oh, no. You can get more extreme, and we'll see.
It's going to get more extreme, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway.
Thank you.
All right. Have a nice week.
Yes, you too.
Okay. Bye.
I don't even know whether to get into this thing now. It's about, the insanity of our food policy. And so this is a Nobel economist saying, here, I'll just, rather than, I'll paraphrasing, let me just read a little. American food policy is what he's talking about. And he says, we spend billions every year on farm subsidies, many of which help wealthy commercial operations to plant more crops than we need. The glut then depresses world crop prices, harming farmers in developing countries. Meanwhile, millions of Americans live tenuously close to hunger, which is barely kept at bay by a food stamp program that gives most beneficiaries just a little more than $4 a day. And, of course, given that, the House of Representatives, controlled by the big-hearted Republican Party, has proposed cutting food stamp benefits by $40 billion. That's on top of the $5 billion they've already cut. But those same Republicans want to keep the farm subsidies, which enrich the rich, keep them. Last year, they gave some $15 billion to those rich. And Joseph Stiglitz says, as small numbers of Americans have grown extremely wealthy, their political power has also ballooned to a disproportionate size. Anyone say Koch brothers? So a few Americans have become outrageously wealthy, and the power that has yielded them politically has given them a disproportionate say in where our collective money goes. They've decided it should go to them and not to the needy. Small, powerful interests. In just the case he's talking about, these wealthy corporate farmers. And they, through giving money to members of Congress, help create these public policies that skew markets all over the world, that hurt little farmers all over the world, and that benefit only them. The Nobel-winning economist says the nonsensical arrangement currently being proposed in the House Farm Bill takes real money that is necessary for bare survival from the poorest Americans and gives it to a small group of the undeserving rich in return for their campaign contributions and political support. There is no economic justification. This distorts our economy by promoting the kind of production we do not need and shrinking the consumption of those with the smallest resources. There is no economic justification, and God knows there is no moral justification. Hey, I got a great idea. Why don't you go elect some more Republicans? Really? Go. Do it. Do it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. And do what Clarence says. You argue with everybody you can get your hands on at every situation you can. We've got to stop it. They will destroy not only us, they'll destroy everything. Really? And on that happy note, that ends today's program. Tomorrow my sister Susan will join me, and I certainly hope that in the interim I find some lighter-hearted fare, because we require distraction. We're Americans. Have a great day.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.